Thank you all. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for what I know will be a lively series of discussions on the congressional budget process. I'm Margaret Spellings, as you saw from the video, Overexposed. I'm the president and CEO of the Bipartisan Policy Center, and we at BPC are proud to be a partner with thehill.com to host this event. And we have an impressive list of distinguished guests from current and former members of the Congress to current and former directors of the Congressional Budget Office. And I'm glad to see you all here today. And I welcome all of those who are joining us virtually. Let me begin with this historical note. It was nearly 51 years ago, this very day, April the 18th, 1973, Congressman Al Ullman of Oregon, then chairman of what was called the Joint Committee on Budget Control, who introduced a bill that was to become the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974. It passed the Senate unanimously and with only 6 opposing votes in the House. And on July 12th, 1974, President Nixon signed it into law. It was one of his last official acts before resigning the presidency a month later. And as all of us today know, everything has gone smoothly since then. The act grew out of a crisis, not Watergate, but President Nixon's impounding of congressionally authorized and appropriated funds. In many ways, the budget process in Congress today is once again in crisis. We believe that to understand where we go next, we must first understand where we have been. The law dramatically reshaped how Congress would think about government spending, revenues, and debt, as well as how lawmakers consider, enact, and monitor appropriations. And finally, how this end of Pennsylvania Avenue interacts with the executive branch over spending disputes. It provided a timetable for both establishing a budget blueprint and for completing annual appropriation bills. But consider this: in the last 50 years, Congress has failed 14 times to produce a concurrent budget resolution, and with only one single exception, all the failures have occurred in the 21st century. And Congress has met the October 1st deadline for all its appropriations just 4 times in the past 4 decades. And of course, we all witnessed what happened these last few months in which Congress could not reach a spending plan agreement until halfway through the fiscal year. I think we can all agree that an on time rate of 10% is not exactly top of the class. Since 1974, we've had a number of crisis points over raising the debt limit, the first in 1985 that resulted in major amendments to the Congressional Budget Act. And most recently, last year, we nearly crossed what we at BPC refer to as the X date. That is the date on which the government would catastrophically default on our obligations. This constant cycle of budgeting chaos robs policymakers of the time and space needed to put forward big, bold, and bipartisan solutions to the long term challenges we face. And of course, the level of debt, now approaching $35 trillion, has grown from 23% of GDP in 1974 to 100% today. Clearly unsustainable. A brighter point is that this landmark law also created the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan scorekeeper for the legislative branch, and a critical resource for countless lawmakers, staff, and experts. And that brings us to where we are today. We have 7 current and former leaders of those budget committees with us whose leadership spans from the 1980s to the current Congress, and we're about to tap into their expertise. Their wisdom and leadership will make for an engaging set of conversations about the past, present, and future of the Congressional Budget Act. In its audience today is Bruce Meredith, who served the first 4 chairmen of the House Budget Committee. And watching us from Israel is Alan Schick, one of the framers of the act. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize BPC's own Bill Hoagland, the largest serving staff director in the history of the Senate Budget Committee. There he is in the back row. That's enough. We don't want Bill to get the big head. The law's birthday is the perfect time to talk about what's working and what isn't when it comes to the congressional budget process. And while Republicans and Democrats may disagree plenty about spending and tax policies, we all agree that the current budget process can be much improved. And BPC is here to help.